what, and I was just like, I didn't even know what to say. And he's like, Dad, just calm down. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy on the other end of a Skype call. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, and like literally my hands are going drip, drip. He's like, oh, relax.
Take it easy.
Such a good friend.
Yeah, good.
Again, I mean, like you, I don't go to Sunday dinner with him, but
I
sent Bob an email saying, I go, Bob, this is what's happening. He's like, listen, here, just calm it down. Just
that sounds exactly like the Bob Berg I know and love.
Oh, I know. Great guy.
Welcome to the HPLS podcast. Live, relevant, and high performance information, conversations, and education weekly.
Episode 11 of the HPLS, the High Performance Logistics Podcast. And if you've been watching any other of these podcasts, you realize some days I get kind of confused as to what episode it is. So I did myself a little homework this time, and I realized it's episode 11. Can't wait till we get into triple digits when I'll kind of be going, I don't understand what's going on. But nonetheless, today I've got a very special guest. As we talk about sales and how to roll out our sales, how to roll out our customer service plans, how to roll out our proposals to our customers, in 2018, we faced a massive increase in the industry when it came to price. There was a lot of conversations to be had with customers. A lot of the times, our customers, our colleagues, even, partners, that trust started to slip because why is our cost going so high? And then, you fast forward from 2018 into the year we just had, 2019, where costs were down below a 2014-15 mark, which is actually incredible because our cost has gone up over 14% since then, and yet everything's decreasing, insurance is going up. You really start to think about trust. And where does trust come into the equation? And even more importantly, how big is trust in the equation when we deal with our customers, our colleagues, our suppliers, our partners, everyone in life? So today I've brought Mark Givens. Mark is author of the trust-based philosophy of books, whether it's customer service, sales, and I know there's a couple other ones, Mark. But I really want to introduce all of you to Mark Givens because I think this conversation is really going to help you catapult, springboard, accelerate, whatever word you want to use to really reach the next level of sales and the next level of customer service with your prospects, with your customers, with your teammates, with your family, with your suppliers. So Mark, thank you so much for being here, my friend. I'm looking forward to this conversation because it's so right up my alley when it comes to trust-based philosophy.
Well, thank you. I'm actually really thrilled to be here and grateful that you take the time. I appreciate the fact that your listeners are listening in.
Oh, you know what? I think it's all reciprocal, right? I mean, in everything we do, in everything we work. I mean, if it's not reciprocal, people wouldn't be your customers. They wouldn't work with you, if it's a one-way street. But I really want to dive in, share with us if you can, what is the trust-based philosophy as a whole? And then I really want to dip into the trust-based sales.
Okay, you bet. So the Cliff Notes version is that after I graduated from college in North Carolina, I went to work first in the insurance business briefly and then a retail company, which I started one little retail store in 1980, which was, think of a combination of Best Buy electronic stores with what became Blockbuster Video, so family-oriented video stores. But back in 1980, there weren't video stores. I was one of the first ones in the state of North Carolina. So it exploded, that industry exploded, and my business plan was never open a store in more than 25,000 people. So I ended up with, over 20 years, about 47 locations, 47 locations, and sold that company, and then got into sales in other industries like real estate. I helped my son some in insurance, and I've done some other things as it relates to sales. But over the 40 years that I have been involved in relationships with people, and my wife and I have been married for more than 4 decades now. We have 5 children, 8 grandchildren. So as I was in that mode of learning, as we all are, I realized that as trust came up as a topic, that it only came up as a concept, how important it is. We have to have trust. But what I didn't ever find was the science of trust. So I have spent a tremendous amount of time reading, studying, preparing programs, and doing the research. So what we've discovered is that I organized and founded a program called the Trust-Based Philosophy. Out of that, at this point, has come 4 books: Trust-Based Selling, Proven Ways to Stop Selling and Start Attracting. That's why we're together. Trust-Based Success, Proven Ways to Stop Meeting and Start Connecting. Trust-Based Success is Proven Ways to Stop Stressing and Start Living. Trust-Based Leadership, Proven Ways to Stop Managing and Start Leading. And then Trust-Based Networking, Proven Ways to Stop Meeting and Start Connecting. So I didn't mean to confuse. There's 4 books, 5th one coming out this year on entrepreneurship. The basis of all of it is trust is not just a concept. There are actually 4 facets of trust that we need to understand, develop, nurture, and build on. The first facet of trust is called the grand opening. We only have one opportunity to make a first impression. So how do we do that the best way? So we call it the grand opening. Critically important. I can share some important principles about that. The second facet of trust is called the rapport building stage. Once people want to connect with us, well, then how do we position ourselves so that they actually want to continue some kind of relationship, whether it be personal or business, whether it be sales or service. Then the third facet of trust is maintenance. In other words, once we've established a relationship with them, we want to have an ongoing relationship with them. How can we make sure that we build it in such a way that they want to recommend us, they want to do business with us, want to continue a relationship, and recommend, repeat, referral, all of that. That's a lot of what Bob Berg will teach in The Go-Giver, as one of your previous guests. And then the last facet of trust is the repair facet, which is, hey, and unless you're perfect, and I don't know anybody that is, we make mistakes. So what's the science behind apologizing? How do we do it? How do we repair trust so that we can rebuild, start back again? So it's the 4 phases. It's the grand opening, rapport, maintenance, and repair. And nobody had ever taught me that. And all 40 years, all that work that I'd done working with people and for people, I only understood trust as a concept, not as a science. And so I teach the philosophy of the importance of building, maintaining, and repairing trust. And it's helped me travel extensively and work with hundreds of companies. I've done about 1,200 programs in the last 15 years all over. So it's just a ball. I get to help people improve their lives, improve their circumstances, improve their businesses, improve their relationships.
That is, wow. I like that. So I want to dive right in because, I'm writing things down as you're speaking, and the grand opening, the building, rapport building step, the maintenance, the repair faucet. So I want to go through each of those.
Sure, absolutely.
I also want to address that whole, the concept versus science, because I think that's, really important these days. When we look at now what's come to light recently, more recently than ever, is the science of habit.
Sure.
What habits really drive us to success.
Sure.
There's a lot of science-backed philosophies coming out. I don't even know if I can call it that, but I'll kind of run with that, and then maybe you can correct me on it. But science-backed ways to help us build our careers, our lives, and everything else. So,
strategies and habits.
100% strategies and habits. So let's actually start there. Concept versus science. Then let's go into the 4 faucets that you were talking about.
Sure.
So, concept versus science. What's the difference?
Sure. Well, the concept is just realizing that, hey, I've heard about trust and I understand it. The common sense would say people have to trust me to want to connect with me. And I have to trust people in order to want to connect with them. The more I trust them, the more time, the more I want to associate with them. But the reality of it is that's just a concept. We all understand that trust is important. But just like any other concept or philosophy, there are systems that we can improve. The Olympics are coming up soon. As an example, it comes to the Olympics, there'll be some wonderful world-class athletes there, but the difference between the gold medalist and the silver, bronze, or those that don't win at all are fractions of milliseconds. The difference is your ability to understand what it takes to really be on the platform and get the gold medal. I try desperately to teach companies and organizations and people, not just the philosophy of the concept of trust, but the science behind it, to understand the systems, the habits, and the steps necessary to improve, so we can be at the top of the podium. We can be, if we want to be, right? So that we can improve our sales, improve our relationships, improve our lives and our circumstances. There really is a science behind understanding it. And so we've kind of torn all that apart, worked hard on it. There's some wonderful speakers and teachers out there on trust, but most of them just spend the time talking about the concept, how important it is. And they'll tell stories about what happened when you succeeded and when you failed, but they don't really tell you all the time how to do it. And I teach the how. The science is the how, the what, the when.
So let's talk science of sales.
Absolutely.
Let's go specifically sales. So what is the science of sales?
Let's start with the grand opening as it relates to sales, but it doesn't have to be always in a sales situation. It could be just in a networking situation where you're trying to meet some people that you could potentially do business with. Harvard did a 15-year study on influence, and it was part of the timing when I was actually getting ready to write my first book, which was Trust-Based Leadership, Proven Ways to Stop Managing and Start Leading. What I got out of their years of science and study, it was research too, was that first impression that we form, that we've all been taught you only have one opportunity to make a first impression. After wiring thousands of brains and determining how quickly our brain would do what we call today profiling, kind of a harsh word, but that's what we do. We look at somebody and we decide, do we want to connect with them? Do we like them? We look at their facial expressions. We look at their body language. We look at the way they're dressed. It's that person that walks in the room, you just think, I need to meet that person. But the science shows that you actually form that opinion in 50 milliseconds. So in less than a blink of an eye, you formed an opinion on whether you want to connect further with that individual or not. Now, if that doesn't scare your listeners, it should, because that means that they need to show up prepared to be their best. You are what you are. You cannot change. My hair is what it is. I can't do so much with that, right? And this is my thing.
I'm with you on that, Mark. I go to my barber and he charges me a finder's fee. So I get you there. Trust me.
Yeah.
I get you there.
So the idea, the important principle here is, how do I do the best to be me, by the way, to not try to be something I'm not? Because people can see right through you. So their initial feeling is in 50 milliseconds. And while you're judging them, they're also judging you. So the grand opening is not just, I need to look my best. That makes sense. I mean, everybody would that would be common sense. I'm going to a networking event, I better show up my best. I'm showing up to meet a client for the first time I've ever really met them. Talk with them on the phone, but I've never met them personally. Gosh, I better show up on time, better do. All those things make sense to us. But what we don't know, what we've discovered, is one simple principle that we teach everywhere we go, is that we have all been taught the same principle, which is once we form that first opinion, by the way, Harvard would say, before I go to the next step, which is rapport, Harvard would say that we all have something called a cognitive bias, the science of how the brain works. That once you form that opinion in 50 milliseconds, whatever opinion you form, I think I can trust them. I think I'd like to connect with them. Or the opposite, your cognitive bias says that whatever you believed, your brain will then go to work trying to prove that you're right, because we all want to be right. So if there's something about them, And we're basing that opinion on competence. Do they look competent, right? Do they look like they're an axe murderer, right? Or do they look like they're crazy, right? Or do they look like they're sensible, right? They're a reasonable person it's not about well-educated, but it's about competent, right? Do they look like they can communicate? And we're also seeking care. What's in the heart? Do they look like a good person? Do they look like they're an arrogant person? Or do they look like somebody that would be an interesting person, somebody that's kind? So people are judging us on competence and care. So 50 milliseconds, and our cognitive bias shows that whatever we believe about that person in 50 milliseconds, our brain then goes to work trying to prove that we're right, because we don't like to be wrong. So if there's something about them we don't like, we start looking for reasons. We'll observe them in the room. We'll watch them from afar. We'll try to find reasons to prove, yeah, I was right. That's an arrogant SOB, or there's just something about them. I was right about that. Or if there's something that says in you, I think I'd like to meet them. They look like a good person. That's somebody I'd like to connect with. You'll find reasons to prove that, well, you're right? So that cognitive bias is an important principle. So we teach something then, if somebody does want to connect with you, it goes from the next step, which is our best grand opening, to the rapport building stage. But in the grand opening, we have that actual physical meeting in many cases. We've all been taught, Dan, a two-step greeting. Hi, I'm, or hello, it's nice to meet you, I'm. It's hi, I'm, or hello, I'm. We stick our hand out, we want to say hello to them, and what happens is, it's really not about them at all. It's about us. It's almost as if we're saying, hi, Dan, I'm so glad you got to meet me. We don't mean it that way, but what happens is we say, hi, I'm Mark. And our brain then doesn't really actually hear what the other person says next, what they say. And they're saying, hi, I'm Dan, right? But how often maybe have you, and as your listeners are listening, how often have you ever walked away from an introduction, you've introduced yourself for the first time, and you cannot for the life of you remember their name, right? You've just said hello.
I was actually about to go there with you because I want to play with this a bit.
Can't remember their name.
1,000%. I don't know how many times, and I'm guilty. Guilty as charged, my friend. I don't know how many times that's happened. And I want to play with this a bit because the big thing, and again, I'm very cognizant of the fact that as you're speaking, I'm trying to listen, but my brain is going, okay, you need to ask Mark this question. You need to ask Mark this question, and I'm going, okay, crazy. I know it's crazy, but
so that's the problem. That's the problem. Can I give you the solution?
1,000%.
Let me give you the solution right now.
Go for it.
Let me improve without you going and taking a memory course and trying to associate people with animals, right? Or circumstances or events or songs. And by the way, I'm all for that. I've taken all those courses, but probably not all of them, but a lot of them. But it never really helped. I was still walking away trying to associate people, but my brain was functioning trying to do those things instead of listening. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, listen with the intent to hear. And actually what happens is when we do the two-step greeting, hi, I'm, or hello, I'm, we're not listening then with the intent to hear. We're listening with the intent to speak again. So we try desperately to move people from a two-step greeting to a three-step greeting. And it's very, very simple. Instead of hi, I'm, you would do that salutation, hello, or hey, it's nice to meet you. But you would include the word you. Critically important. Not I, but you. It's nice to meet you today. It's good to see you today. It's a lovely day today. Hey, I appreciate the fact that we get together today, that you and I get together. You would include the word you instead of I. Then the second step of the three-step greeting is to say you again. But then you say thank you. There's always a reason to say thank you. So let's say, for instance, you got an appointment with a brand new sales client. Maybe you talked with them on the phone, but you've never met them in person. So obviously, you have that 50 milliseconds to make the first impression. then you stick your hand out and you would say something like, hey, it's so good of you to see me today. Thank you for giving me the time. Now, that sounds simple, but instead of saying I in those opening 2 steps, you're saying the word you. Now, there are some things that I cannot yet explain because I don't have the millions of dollars yet to do all the research. But the point is, there's something different with people. Having done this tens of thousands of times now, there is something different that resonates with people that they recognize, but they don't understand what's different. They see it, they feel it, but they've never experienced it before. And when you say, it's nice to see you, Dan, thank you for seeing me today, or thank you for the time, I'm Mark, your brain does 2 things. First of all, it's resonated with the other individual, because Dale Carnegie even taught that the most interesting thing that any concept, any conversation anybody ever has is about themselves. Well, you've made it about them by saying the word you twice. And the other principle, which we can't explain yet, but we know it's true. Some things in the universe we just can't explain. By saying 3 things instead of 2, the percentage of the names that you automatically remember, it goes up dramatically for some people. By saying 3 things instead of 2, your brain clicks off, has a much higher percent of listening, and so you actually tune in, and when they say, well, I'm Dan, then the automatic next step then is really a 4th piece, which Dale Carnegie taught, which would be to repeat their name. And they say, hey, well, I'm Dan. Well, hey, Dan, it's really nice to meet you. And there's something magical about that happens. Now, it may seem so simple, but it's not simplistic, because when you go out and try this on somebody, what you're going to discover is you'll fumble all through it. So when I'm out working with companies and I do programs, and we're just talking beginning at about the grand opening stage, I actually have everybody stand up, get a partner, and practice this on each other, because it's not common. We've been doing a 2-step greeting our whole lives, and the truth is that won't put us on the gold medal stand. That'll just leave us in competition, but it won't put us on the gold medal stand. And having seen it happen in hundreds, even thousands of other individuals that we've worked with, we know that as simple as this is, it's a game changer. It resonates with people. It builds trust like we've never really built before. The 2-step greeting is about us. The 3-step greeting is about the other person, and it automatically builds a foundation of trust. Now, that's assuming you're a good person, that you're confident and you're caring, right? I'm putting
I think anything that we do and anything we talk about.
Right.
I'm under the complete opinion that you're not a snake oil salesperson.
Yeah, that's right. Because if you're a jerk and an idiot,
But
if you're a jerk and an idiot,
exactly.
It's not gonna help.
Yeah.
So that in itself, the grand opening stage, and all of your listeners today, if they just ignored the other 3 facets of the trust-based philosophy and just went out and actually demonstrated, practiced, and continually used the 3-step greeting instead of a 2-step greeting, they built a deeper foundation of trust immediately, because that 50 milliseconds turns into a handshake and a greeting. And if we want to connect, that's the difference. It's a difference between meeting and connecting on an emotional level, because that's really what we're talking about here. So the grand opening is critically important. It's maybe simple. It may be something that you say, wow, that seems so simple, but it's not simplistic, because it's something you have to reprogram your brain to do, because we've been doing it wrong. And that's the way I feel. It's wrong. We've been doing it wrong. We've been doing the way we've been taught. We've been taught wrong. There's a better way. You want to win the gold medal? You do the steps that'll get you to the gold medal stand. And that will get you started. Maybe it won't win you the gold medal, but it'll get you on the right path to win. It really takes all 4 facets to be the gold medal winner. But anyway, I hope the listeners
you have that grand opening. You go in with that new grand opening, and then do you immediately switch into the rapport building stage?
Yeah.
Is it a seamless transition?
Yeah, and by the way, this is a natural step from the grand opening, because that's pretty quick. I mean, let's face it, you got 50 milliseconds and you walk up, you introduce yourself, you're trying to build some foundation of trust. The rapport building stage is really all about asking questions, listening more, talking less. That's really it. My father, who was a salesperson for Sears, all he ever did was sell appliances for Sears. I think it was probably the finest appliance salesperson God ever put on the earth. There's lots of, I'm sure, good appliance salespeople out there, but my dad was the best. And so he taught me a principle. He taught it to me when I was a teenager, the 90-10 principle. And he told me, this is very difficult to do, but Mark, when you're out there working with people, trying to build relationships, and when you're in a selling position, and we're all selling, you would talk 10% of the time and listen 90% of the time. Because what do people really want to talk about? They want to talk about what's important to them. That's themselves, or their need, or their problem, or the thing that they think that you can fix or help them fix. So the 90-10 principle just says, ask more questions. So let me give you let me give your listeners, you and your listeners, a simple way to do that. They may or may not have heard of a concept. Some people like acronyms, and it helps them remember the steps. So we teach an acronym called FORD. Dale Carnegie, back in the 40s, when he wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, he taught this principle. There have been hundreds of other books written about how to connect with people. And what we've learned is that if people use the FORD concept, now what's that mean? People like to talk about themselves, their family as an example. So F stands for family. When your brain says, there's a good time to ask them something about themselves, their family, their background, tell me something about yourself. When you ask a family question, most people will talk about that, right? They will talk about that. When you ask a O question, which is occupation, what do you do? Or what did you do? What have you done? If you ask an R question, what do you do for fun, right? When a holiday's coming up, you can just ask a question, say, hey, you know what? Valentine's Day is coming up. What you got planned for Valentine's Day? The D is the most difficult of all. It stands for dreams. So family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. It's more difficult to talk to people about their dreams, where they see themselves down the road, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's more difficult to talk about that concept, that principle, until you know them a little better. Now, let me give you a quick example so that it makes sense, so it'll resonate with you. When you and I first got on the phone prior to hitting the record button on this, what I did, we don't really know each other really well. We can find each other online, right, and look a little bit up, but we hadn't really talked a lot. We talked on the phone a little bit.
Yep.
So what I really did, it's not a trick. It's not manipulative. If you're sincerely interested in others, you'll ask them the kind of questions that I just named off: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And Dan, that's what I did with you when we got online. I learned more about your background. I learned about where you've been what you've been doing since you were a teenager, right? I learned about where you're from. I learned about your expertise and what you love doing. I learned where you do it. And all of that happened in maybe 6 or 7 minutes before we went to this recording.
And I thought you were an awesome conversationalist, and you probably said 6 words.
And by the way, I was just practicing the 90-10 rule, which is, I want to know more about Dan. It was sincere. I mean, if it's not sincere, people can see right through it. But if you want to learn about your clients and customers, don't tell them what they need. Don't tell them how you can solve their problems. I have a friend out in Colorado that said to me one time, Mark, you can't be the answer to somebody's prayers until you know what they're praying for. Well, that's not a religious comment. It's about life and business. You can't solve anybody's problems if you don't know what their real problem is.
It's a reality comment.
Yeah. So I actually have a quote that I use all the time when I'm out speaking to organizations and groups, associations, in all different industries. I wrote in my my very first book, Finding My Why, Ernie's Journey, A Tale for Seekers, which is actually a parable book about success and not leaving this world with regrets. The trust-based philosophy books have come later. So I've written 8 books. The 9th book comes out now. That Finding My Why, Ernie's Journey, A Tale for Seekers book was an Amazon #1 bestseller in 3 different categories. They can find that online. But I said in that book, when your brain and your heart connect on the why, the what and the how then appears. And here's the principle. Until you let your brain and your heart connect on why somebody has a problem, or, or maybe my own problem. When my brain and my heart connect on the why, the real purpose behind something, then I can solve the problem. That's when the what and the how will appear. So often we go to work trying to solve people's problems with the what and the how and the when. And the truth is, we don't understand the why yet, which is, why are they having that problem? Why is that problem important to them? And by the way, it relates completely to dating or marriage too. In other words, to have a deep relationship with your spouse or your partner, you better understand what it is about them that ticks, what drives them, their why. You understand that, then you can communicate with them on a level that makes a difference. So the rapport building stage is about asking questions and listening, right? And that's really the whole principle.
I'm very curious because I love that fact that you ask and listen. I'm a big proprietor on having a quote unquote sales script that's authentic, where you ask the same type of questions over and over. For myself, it's more of, qualify the customer. Does this customer work within your customer profile? Because you'd much rather have somebody where you align than somebody who you don't align with and you keep doing this when it comes to, ebbs and flows in your business. So you build this rapport. One thing that kind of stuck out was actually above and beyond the first 2, because I conceptually and from a business perspective grab it. The maintenance and the repair, to me, are very, very, very intriguing, because I'm just wondering if it's a wording or something. So what is the maintenance mode or faucet of the business? Because you're building this rapport, you got this rapport. Maintenance, and because I haven't read your book, I haven't received it yet. I will consume it in no time once I do. But and then I'm actually going to ask you for a follow-up. Yeah. I'm actually going to ask you for a follow-up, because then I'll be fully educated on that system. So what is the maintenance mode?
Yeah. All right. So once we've established the foundation, which is the grand opening, and then we built some rapport, they like us, they trust us. Bob Berg said it. There have been other authors that have said it. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Well, once they trust us, in fact, I think Bob even said it, all things being equal, people do business with people they know, like, and trust.
Like and trust. Yeah.
Right.
Fully like bang on right there.
Well, that's right. So once we're there, they know us, they like us, they trust us. Now, how do we keep that going so that they want to continually do business with us or have a relationship with us, right? Be connected with us. Well, the maintenance stage is really not difficult, because it's being a giver instead of a taker. We love people that are generous. And I don't mean generous necessarily with their money. I mean with appreciation, with kindness, with respect. So in the maintenance stage, from a business standpoint, would be something as simple as writing thank you notes on a regular basis. I mean, if that's a simple principle, that if your mind is in a giving stage, you're always meeting people that you can write a thank you note to. So that's the simplest principle of all, which is, I can do 2 a day. I mean, why couldn't you write 2 thank you notes? Begin your day with writing a thank you note. But that's not it. Harvey McKay, back when I was in the retail business, back when I had my retail company, Harvey McKay had come out with a book called How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive. Remember that book? Or maybe you've read it. Maybe some of your listeners have read it. Well,
I actually had the audio tapes of it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'm older than you, so I might have the 8-track. But but anyway, the point is he wrote something profound in that book, and he called it the McKay 66. And the McKay 66 were 66 questions that if you know these things about another individual, whether it be your client or your customer or some other friend, if you know that if you know those 66, the answers to those 66 questions, you probably know more about them than their mother does. So it's everything from what they're interested in and what really jazzes them up. It's where they went to college. If they're religious, where do they go to church? What are the most proud points in their life? What's their favorite beverage, right? Where do they vacation? Are they married or not married? If they're married, then what's their anniversary? When's their birthday? If they have children, well, what are their children's names and birthdays? If they have animals, what kind of animals do they have? And by the way, what's the animal's name? So it sounds like, well, why do I need to know all that? Well, here's why you need to know it. Because the maintenance phase of building trust is that then you always know when is the right time to connect with that individual, because you're trying to build more trust. Well, how do you build more trust? Well, you show you care. And how do you show you care? You're there at the most important points in their life. I am for social media. I am for technology. We couldn't do this if it wasn't for technology. You're in Canada. I'm way in North Carolina. But here's the reality. If Dan, if we were associated on a regular basis and I knew when your birthday was, it would be nice if I could say to you through a card, happy birthday. And you'd appreciate that. You might actually appreciate a Facebook message, along with the other 2,000 people that say happy birthday. You might actually appreciate a text that says, hey, Dan, I recognize today's your birthday. I didn't want the day to go by without wishing you a wonderful day. Happy birthday. But more than anything, see, the phone still rings. And what I've discovered is that picking up the phone, and even if it's a 30-second voicemail that says, hey, Dan, I just want you to know today's your birthday, and there's no way I can let the day go by without wishing you a joyous happy birthday. Just glad you had another one. Any day that that you wake up on the green side of the grass, it's a good day. Happy birthday, brother. For me, I just want you to know, and I'm older than maybe some of your listeners, that phone call is golden. Now, I don't need to have 10,000 people that I do that for. I mean, the reality is all I need is enough. What's enough? To drive my business to the level that I want to have, whether it be financial or, whatever, however I want to define success. But I know this, you have a sphere of influence and you want to keep that sphere top of mind, which means that whatever it is you do and whatever it is, especially in a sales situation, because that's what you asked me about, you want people to think, when they think whatever widget you're working on, when that comes to mind, they need to think you, because there's plenty of other people that do what you do. Well, how do you do it? You have to earn that. You do that with the maintenance phase. Thank you cards, calls, understanding the McKay 66. It's all about maintenance, all about showing appreciation. It's all about being there at the right moment so that it's not a surprise. You don't want people to forget you. So you don't want to hound people. You want to show that that they're important to you. You want to be sincere about it. You don't want to call people every week, but if you call them occasionally, right? If you text them occasionally, you write them a note occasionally, and we teach in the maintenance phase that you would also show competence and care, right? So whatever it is you do, whatever widget is that you're selling, you would want to show competence in the field of your expertise. You can't just send recipe cards, is what I'm saying, unless you're a chef, right? If you're a chef, you send recipe cards. But if you sell real estate, then you got to show competence in real estate, but then you also got to show care. I think that's what Harvey McKay was trying to teach when he wrote How to Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive and gave the McKay 66. So those are 3 simple examples of how to build the maintenance phase and build trust. We have many, many, many more, but for the sake of your show today, I think those are reasonably good examples that anybody can do.
Yeah, and I like the competence part, because I've always believed in the confidence loop and the perpetualness of it. So
Sure.
We're in this maintenance faucet of it, and then we talk about the repair faucet.
Sure.
So I guess, and if I can just kind of go off the deep end here, the repair faucet's probably, you're only as good as the last solution you solved for the customer or something along those lines, but I'm dying to hear what it is. So I'll let you take over.
But here's what we teach when we teach the apology or the repair facet of the trust-based philosophy. Let's face it, we all make mistakes in business and in life. And so there are 4 clear steps to apologizing. Now, because we make mistakes, the right thing to do is to go down the path to try to repair what we've done if we want to continue the relationship. So, and by the way, what it used to be when I was in retail for years, we used to say that if you offended one customer, they would tell 100. That was pre-technology and social media. Now you offend one person and there's immediate reviews, and so and everybody has a voice. Well, they can have a voice. So you can't not address when you make a mistake, especially as it relates to business. Personal stuff can stay personal, but when it comes to business, if you just ignore the mistake you've made and don't speak out and speak up, then it appears that you don't care. And that's not the message that you want to deliver. So that leads us to the 4 steps of the apology. The first step is recognizing the fact that you actually did something that has harmed or offended someone. So that's a hard step for some people, because we like to be perfect. We don't like to admit we were wrong. So the first step is understanding that, yes, in fact, whether we necessarily agree with it or not, or feel the same way that customer or client does, that's not relevant. They feel harmed. So we have to recognize that we have a problem. The second step then is to admit that we had a failure, right? That we failed them in some way. Now, many attorneys out there, not speaking from, not an attorney, so would say, well, you don't want to admit, because if you admit, then you have possible liability. But the truth is, if you don't admit it, you can't go beyond that. And it just gets bigger and bigger, by the way, because if you don't admit what you did and your position, then the world gets to decide how you feel about it, and they get to define what you did. That's not a good thing.
It's funny, because when you say, admit, that you did something. So I recently heard that they actually, a couple of years ago, passed a law in Ontario, because, Canadians are known for saying sorry.
Yeah.
Where they passed a law where if there's an accident and I say sorry on the scene, they can't hold it against me that I'm guilty for it.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of comical, because, we sit back and we say, sorry, I didn't mean that. And it's like, oh, okay, you said sorry, so you're automatically at fault.
You must be liable. Yeah.
Exactly. And then I'm kind of like, yeah, that's kind of funny, actually, they would do that, because for years it's been that Canadians always say A and sorry,
Yeah. Isn't it wonderful, though, that Canadians are smart enough to recognize that we need to say we're sorry, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've done it my whole life. I'm walking down an aisle and somebody's walking the other way, and, my cart might be, this much further into kind of their lane, if you're talking, I'm like, oh, sorry, and I move it over, but I'm sorry, I was looking, and I kind of went out, and you just, move, and, there's
that's right. But all right, so there's another little piece to that part, the second part, though. Not just saying that you're sorry, but actually saying how you recognize that it harmed the other person. If this had happened to me, this is, I can understand. I'm so sorry, because if this had happened to me, if you'd done this to me, I know how it would make me feel, right? So first you recognize you did something wrong. The second thing you do is you admit that you did something wrong and how it made the other individual feel, right? Or how it harmed them, and you recognize how it could have harmed them, or maybe even how much it did harm them. So that's the second step. The third step then is what's necessary to rectify. In other words, what are you doing to fix it, right? Because it really doesn't do you any good to just say, I'm sorry, but then your cart's in the way, but you don't move, right? I mean, you can be sorry, but you got to do something to fix it. You got to do something to say, hey, here's what we're going to do. Now, I've had companies ask me before, as an example, well, what if we're trying to do everything we can do that we feel is reasonable to repair the situation, and the other individual or the client or the customer or whatever, they don't think that whatever we're doing is good enough. It's not enough, right? They're just not going to be satisfied. Well, the point is, reasonable is the important part here. It's not what they think is reasonable. It's what you understand is reasonable. All you can do is what's reasonable, right? So we've seen court cases, as an example, where somebody was found guilty and a jury, they thought it was reasonable to fine or to penalize somebody millions, right, of dollars. And the person that did the harm said, well, that's not fair. But apparently the jury thinks that's reasonable. So when you're the one deciding what's reasonable, you get to decide what's reasonable. And you need to be transparent about that. This is what we're doing, and this is what we believe is reasonable to rectify the situation. Here's what we can do, and here's what we will do to fix it, to show that we actually are very sorry. There are examples every day in the news of companies or circumstances that went bad. And so often we don't see anything that's being done to make it better. And so now we form an opinion about what we think about that company or that individual, because that company or individual wasn't transparent about, hey, we recognize we made a mistake, and here's how it made people feel, and here's what we're doing. A great example of a company well, I probably shouldn't name companies, but anyway, there are plenty of examples out there of organizations that have done it right, and there are plenty of organizations that have done it wrong and continue to do it wrong. Mm-hmm. So the fourth step of the apology phase then is to not do it again, right? You just don't do it again. If you know you messed up and you went through all those steps to try to repair it, then you just don't do it again, right? Don't go down that path again. And there's no reason even to test it. Didn't go well, so don't test it. So you don't do it again. And there's not a fifth part here, but I have had people ask me through calls or emails or text messages or companies and events or programs or trainings that I've been doing. Well, what happens if the other person won't accept your apology? Well, see, the truth is that's on them. Yep. You can't make anybody do anything. But you can do everything you can, so that you can move on, right? Once you've done all that you can do, you can move on. No regrets, right? Because we know, hey, I sure wish it hadn't gone this way, but we actually have done everything we can do to correct the situation. Now let's move on. And what everybody else chooses to do, we'll just have to let them decide what they're going to do and how they're going to do it, when they're going to do it, if they'll accept our apology and our steps to rectify. So that's it. That's the 4 steps of the apology. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. I think that's a lot for everyone to chew on.
It is.
And being cognizant of your time. I'm going to say to everyone watching, for me anyways, I've got probably 2 pages of notes here. I hope you do. Everyone listening or watching this, I hope you do. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here. I mean, just those 4 steps, the concept versus science, the grand opening, the rapport, the maintenance, the repair. I mean, that's a lot to chew on. I really can't wait to get your book. I'm so excited to get your book. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. For all of you watching and listening, I'll make sure to put all Mark's details on the actual blog page. You'll see it in the notes and below this blog. Mark, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
My
I really really appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Dan, and thanks for everybody listening. I hope that the time was well used for you, that you feel that it was of value.